The forest was a cage of ice and shadow. Alara's breath tore from her lungs in ragged, white plumes, each one a betrayal in the still, frozen air. Her bare feet, long since numbed to the stones and the frozen pine needles, carried her forward on pure instinct. The threadbare shift she wore clung to her skin, soaked with melted snow and sweat, but it was the other scent she feared, the faint, blossoming sweetness of orange blossom and new rain that would truly give her away. Her scent was changing. They would know. A cramp, sharp and low, seized her belly. She stumbled against a gnarled oak, biting her lip until she tasted copper to keep from crying out. Her hand pressed against the slight, firm curve below her navel. It was too soon to show, but she knew. She felt the flicker of a second heartbeat, a tiny, defiant echo of her own. The child of the mate who had rejected her. 3 nights ago, under a bleeding moon, she had stood before the entire Greyfall pack and her alpha, Ronan. He had looked at her, his eyes the cold gray of winter slate, and had spoken the words that shattered her world. I reject you, Alara. You are weak, a whisper of an Omega. You are no mate of mine. The bond, that fragile, golden thread she had felt the moment she'd first seen him at 16, had snapped with an agony that was both spiritual and visceral. It left a void, a howling silence inside her chest, and in the ashes of that silence, a new life had made itself known. Ronan's last, cruel gift. She pushed off the tree, forcing her legs to move. He would hunt her, not out of desire, but out of pride. An Omega, his rejected Omega, carrying his heir, he would see it as a stain, a living rebellion. He would either drag her back in chains, or tear the child from her womb under the guise of pack law. Alara would die first. A new scent hit her then, cutting through the pine and her own fear. It was deep, ancient, and powerful. Like sun-warmed stone, dark amber, and the crisp edge of a lightning-struck tree. It was alpha, but not like Ronan's, which was all aggression and dominance. This was a scent of absolute authority, of borders and kingdoms. It was a scent that did not ask to be acknowledged. It commanded. Fear, sharper than any cold, lanced through her. She had crossed a border. This was not Greyfall territory anymore. She was in the wildlands, the unclaimed buffer between packs. Or so she had thought. This scent marked everything. It screamed, "Keeper." A howl rose behind her, far too close. Ronan's hunters. Despair gave her a final burst of speed. She burst into a small clearing where the moonlight fell unimpeded, a silver pool in the darkness. And there, she froze. He stood across the clearing, as if he had been waiting for her. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, his shoulders broad enough to block the moon. He wore dark, travel-worn leathers, and his hair, the color of raven wings, fell to his shoulders. He wasn't just looking at her. He was seeing her. His eyes, a burning molten gold, held hers, and in their depths, a storm began to brew. The world narrowed to that gaze. The cramps, the cold, the howls at her back, all of it faded into a distant hum. A strange, warm flutter started low in her chest, a feeling utterly foreign. It was like a string, long lost and forgotten, had been plucked. It vibrated, singing a note of pure, undeniable rightness. He took a single step forward, his nostrils flaring. The golden eyes widened, then ignited. A low, seismic growl rolled from his chest, a sound that made the very air tremble. It wasn't a growl of threat, not towards her. It was a sound of primal, earth-shaking recognition. Mine. The word was a rough, awed whisper. Yet it carried across the clearing like a vow. Behind her, the hunters crashed into the clearing. She saw Ronan's beta, Garrick, his teeth bared in a triumphant snarl. There she is, the little runaway. The stranger's head snapped up. The awe in his eyes vanished, replaced by a ferocity so absolute it was terrifying. He moved, and it was a blur of lethal grace. He placed himself between Alara and the hunters, his body a shield. The aura of power that exploded from him was tangible, a pressure that forced the Greyfall wolves to skid to a halt. You! The stranger's voice was now a king's decree. Cold and final. Are trespassing on the soil of the Blackwater Kingdom. You are threatening what is mine. Lay one finger on her, and I will peel the skin from your bones and hang it from my borders. Garrick paled, his bravado crumbling as he finally scented the sheer dominance rolling off the man. Kaelin, he stammered. Alpha King. Alara's heart stopped. Kaelin. The stories of the reclusive, merciless Alpha King of Blackwater were told to pups to make them behave. He was a myth. A power so vast, he had no need for alliances or games. Kaelin didn't even acknowledge Garrick's recognition. His gaze was locked on Alara, the gold in his eyes softening to an unbearable heat. He saw the tremble in her limbs, the torn shift, the faint, telling scent of orange blossom and rain, and beneath it, the vulnerable, precious secret she carried. The growl that left him then was one of pure, unadulterated wrath, but his hand, when he slowly reached back towards her, was steady. Come here, he said, his voice dropping to a tone meant only for her. It was not a command, but a summons she felt in her very soul. Alara, with the last of her strength, took a stumbling step forward. Her small, frozen hand found his. The moment their skin touched, a jolt of electricity, warm and dazzling, shot up her arm. The silent, howling void inside her chest filled. A new bond, thicker than steel and brighter than sunlight, slammed into place. It was terrifying. It was glorious. She saw his breath catch, felt the shockwave of the same connection rock through him. His fingers closed around hers, engulfing them completely. He pulled her gently to his side, tucking her against the solid, immovable wall of his body. His warmth seeped into her, chasing away the ice of days. He turned his ferocious glare back to the cowering hunters. Tell your Alpha that the Omega he was too much of a fool to cherish is now under my protection. She is my fated mate. She carries my future. And if he or any of his pack ever cross my shadow again, I will erase Greyfall from the map. He looked down at her, his gaze sweeping over her face, lingering on her lips, then dropping to where her hand still pressed protectively against her belly. The anger bled away, replaced by a possessiveness so profound it stole her breath. You are safe now, little one, he murmured, the words a promise etched in stone. You both are. As he swept her into his arms, cradling her against his chest, as if she were the most precious treasure in all the world, Alara knew her old life was over. The run was finished. But as the deep, sure rhythm of his heart beat against her ear, a new, terrifying, and exhilarating question took its place. What began when a rejected Omega was claimed by a king? Kaelin moved through the forest like a shadow given purpose. Alara, a slight, shivering weight in his arms. He adjusted his grip, tucking her closer, letting the heat of his body seep through her thin shift. She didn't speak, just stared up at him with wide, wary eyes, the color of a summer forest, all greens and golds and deep, hidden shadows. The bond between them thrummed like a plucked harp string, a vibrant, living thing that sang of home and mine, with every step he took. He could scent her exhaustion, her fear, the sharp, metallic tang of her blood from her torn feet. But beneath it, clear and pure as a mountain spring, was her true scent, orange blossom and rain, and the new, fragile note of life budding within her. His wolf surged forward, a wave of possessiveness and fury so potent it made his vision tinge with gold. The Greyfall Alpha had thrown away a jewel, had hurt what was his. The only thing keeping him from turning back and painting the forest with Ronan's entrails was the woman in his arms. Where are you taking me? Her voice was a scratchy whisper, barely audible. To my home. To Blackwater Keep. His own voice was rough, unaccustomed to gentleness, but he forced it lower. You need warmth. Food. A healer. She tensed. A healer will know. About the baby. He stopped walking, looking down at her. Moonlight caught the track of a single tear, freezing it to silver on her cheek. Yes, he said, simply. And they will care for you both. This child is under my protection now. That makes it a child of Blackwater. Nothing will harm it. The words seemed to stagger her. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the trick. Finding none. A small, broken sound escaped her, and she let her head rest against his shoulder. The trust in that simple gesture, however reluctant, sent a surge of satisfaction through him deeper than any victory in battle. They emerged from the tree line not into more wilderness, but onto a wide, torch-lit road that curved up a mountainside. There, Carved into the very bones of the mountain and silhouetted against the star-strewn sky, was Blackwater Keep. It wasn't a castle of delicate spires, but a fortress of sheer power, dark stone, towering walls, and the roaring banner of a black wolf on a field of midnight blue. Sentries on the walls moved, their forms shifting fluidly between man and wolf. As Kaelin carried her across the lowered drawbridge, through gates that groaned with age and strength, the pack's awareness prickled against his skin. Curious eyes watched from windows, from courtyards, whispers followed them, a rustle of speculation. He ignored it all, his focus absolute. He took the main stairs 2 at a time, moving through halls lined with tapestries depicting ancient hunts and star maps, straight to the heart of his domain, his personal chambers. The room was vast, dominated by a massive fireplace where a fire already roared, and a wide bed piled with furs. He set her down gently on a thick rug before the hearth, crouching before her. Her feet were a mess of cuts and embedded forest debris. He growled, the sound purely animal. "This will sting," he warned. And without waiting for a servant, he fetched a basin of warm water and a clean cloth from the adjoining washroom. He knelt and took her foot in his hand. She flinched, but not from his touch, from the shock of it. An alpha king, on his knees, tending to her wounds. His touch was meticulous, careful as he cleaned each cut. The silence stretched, filled only by the crackle of the fire and her hitched breaths. The bond hummed between them, a conduit for the storm of feelings she was trying to contain. Confusion, fear, a desperate, fragile hope. "Why?" she finally breathed. "You are a king. I am rejected, used, carrying another's child." He didn't look up, concentrating on a stubborn thorn. "The moon does not make mistakes, Alara. She gives us what we need, not what we think we deserve. Ronan was a blind fool. His rejection means nothing here. That child," he said, his thumb brushing a clean spot on her ankle, "is a part of you. Therefore, it is precious to me." He finished and set her foot down, reaching for a jar of salve that smelled of honey and comfrey. "As for the rest," he continued, his golden eyes lifting to capture hers, "you are not used. You are mine, my fated mate, my queen. The past is a country we do not visit. Your life begins tonight, here, with me." Before she could process the monumental weight of his words, a firm knock sounded at the door. "Enter," Kaelin called, rising to his full height, his presence instantly shifting from caretaker to sovereign. An older woman with sharp, kind eyes and the scent of lavender and dried herbs entered. She was followed by a younger beta male carrying a tray laden with food, roasted meat, fresh bread, steaming soup. The woman's eyes, healer Althea's, went straight to Alara, then to Kaelin, then back. Understanding dawned, followed by a respectful nod. "My king, you called for a healer." "For my mate," Kaelin said, the words resonating in the stone room. "See to her. Every need. She is exhausted, malnourished, and injured." He paused, and his next words were a quiet order that brooked no dissent. "And she carries. Ensure both mother and pup thrive." Althea's eyebrows rose, but her professionalism was impeccable. She bowed. "Of course, my lord." Kaelin turned back to Alara. He cupped her cheek, his thumb stroking once. "Eat, rest. Althea is the best. Listen to her." He leaned down, his lips brushing her forehead in a kiss that was a brand and a blessing. "I have a pact to address, and a message to send to Greyfall. No one will disturb you." He strode from the room, leaving Alara in a whirlwind of sensation. The warmth of the fire, the scent of food making her stomach clench with sudden hunger, the lingering heat of his touch on her skin and in the bond, and the kind, assessing gaze of the healer. Althea approached, not with pity, but with calm competence. "Well, my dear, let's get you sorted, shall we? A queen has to keep her strength up." The matter-of-fact tone, the assumption of her new title, was more grounding than any comfort. As Althea examined her, as Alara tasted the rich, savory soup, feeling it warm her from the inside out, she looked around the king's chamber. His space. Now, apparently, hers. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming. Yet, the echo of his words played in her mind. "Your life begins tonight." Outside, standing on a high balcony overlooking the main courtyard, Kaelin addressed his gathered beta and head warriors. His voice, amplified by his power, carried through the cold night. "Hear me! The moon has blessed Blackwater. My fated mate has been found. She is here, under our protection. She is to be shown the loyalty and respect owed to your queen. Any who speak against her, any who question her place, will answer to me." He let his dominance flare, a suffocating wave that had even his strongest warriors dipping their heads in submission. "And send a rider to the Greyfall border. Tell Alpha Ronan that his stray dog, Garrick, trespassed and threatened what is mine. For that insult, the western meadowlands he covets are now forfeit to Blackwater. If he disputes it, I will welcome the conversation." Below, a low, unified growl of approval rumbled through the pack. They had a queen. Their king had claimed his heart. And they had gained new territory without a fight. It was a good night. Back in the chamber, Elara, now clean, dressed in a soft linen nightgown, and tucked beneath the furs of Kaelin's bed, felt the baby move, a gentle, fluttering kick. For the first time since Ronan's rejection, she smiled. She placed a hand over the spot, and through the new, glorious bond, she felt a surge of answering emotion not from the baby, but from Kaelin, distant yet connected. A wave of fierce, unwavering protectiveness and a joy so deep it felt like the sun rising in her soul. She was not just safe, she was cherished, and as she drifted into the first deep, dreamless sleep she'd had in months, she dared to believe the king's promise. Her old life was gone, but perhaps, just perhaps, this new one could be a fairy tale. Elara woke to sunlight. It streamed through a high, arched window, painting warm stripes across the dark stone floor and the rich furs heaped around her. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was vast, smelling of pine, amber, and male Kaelin. Memory flooded back. The freezing run, the golden-eyed king, his vow. She sat up. The room was empty, but evidence of his care was everywhere. A fresh dress of deep emerald wool lay draped over a chair by the fire, which crackled merrily. A small table held a breakfast tray, berries, yogurt, warm, honey-drizzled oats, and beside it, a single winter rose in a crystal vase, its petals holding a drop of water like a diamond. Her heart did a funny, fluttering thing. It wasn't Ronan's showy, possessive gifts. This was quiet, thoughtful, sustenance. She ate, the food tasting like life itself. As she finished, healer Althea arrived with a gentle knock, carrying a basket of herbs and tinctures. "Good, you're up," Althea said, her eyes crinkling. "Color in your cheeks." "The pup is quiet this morning?" Elara instinctively placed a hand on her belly. "Quiet. But there." The bond with Kaelin was a constant, low hum in her chest. A comforting presence. "Where is the king?" "Holding court in the great hall," Althea said, checking Elara's pulse. "He wanted you to rest. But he also said you are to have the run of the keep. You are not a prisoner, my lady. You are its lady." The title still sent a jolt through her. "The pack, what are they saying?" Althea met her gaze, honest. "They are curious. Some are wary. An unknown Omega, from a weak pack, carrying another's child. It is unconventional, but they feel what their king feels through the pack bonds. His conviction is absolute. His joy is startling. That carries weight, more than any pedigree." It was a frank assessment, and Elara appreciated it. She was an outsider. She would have to earn her place, bond or no bond. After Althea left, Elara dressed in the emerald gown. It fit beautifully, as if made for her. She ventured out of the chamber, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. The keep was a labyrinth of power. She followed the murmur of voices down a sweeping staircase to a gallery that overlooked the great hall. She hid in the shadows of a column, looking down. Kaelin sat on a simple, massive stone throne. He wore no crown, but he didn't need one. His authority was in his posture, in the calm, listening tilt of his head, in the gold of his eyes that missed nothing. Warriors, farmers, craftsmen, all came before him with disputes, requests, reports. He ruled with a firm, fair swiftness. "The eastern fence is mended, my king. The winter wolves have been driven back." "Good. Double the patrols until the deep snows. My brother's mate claims a portion of my harvest," says the boundary stone was moved. "We will go at noon and see the land. The stone does not lie. Neither will I." His voice was deep, reasoned, commanding respect, not fear. This was not the furious Alpha who had faced down Ronan's hunters. nor the tender caretaker who had washed her feet. This was the ruler, and he was magnificent. She was so engrossed she didn't sense the approach until a smooth, cold voice spoke beside her. "So, you are the little Omega who has enchanted our king." Elara turned. A tall, stunningly beautiful woman stood there, her hair like polished silver, her eyes a cool blue. She wore robes of fine gray silk that spoke of high status. Her scent was frost and night-blooming jasmine, sharp and alluring. "I am Elara. I know who you are." The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I am Lyra, head of the Council of Elders. We advise the king on matters of tradition and continuity." Her gaze dropped pointedly to Elara's stomach, still flat beneath the gown. "An interesting development. The king is compassionate to take in a stray from a fallen pack, especially one in your delicate condition." The insult was velvet-wrapped, but sharp as a blade. Elara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. But something stirred within her, not her old, cowering Omega instinct, but a spark of defiance fanned by the bond humming in her chest. She was Kaelin's mate. This woman's disapproval meant nothing. "The king has been nothing but honorable," Elara said, her voice quieter than Lyra's, but steady. "My condition, as you call it, is a blessing under his protection." Lyra's cool smile tightened. "Of course, protection is one thing, the throne is another. Blackwater needs a strong, uncomplicated bloodline. I merely hope our king's gallant heart does not cloud his judgment about what is best for the kingdom's future." Before Elara could respond, a voice like groundstone cut through the air from below. "Lyra." They both looked down. Kaelin was staring up at the gallery, his audience forgotten. His expression was calm, but his eyes were molten gold. Fixed on the elder, the temperature in the vast hall seemed to drop. Every wolf present fell silent, sensing the shift in their alpha's aura. "You are addressing my mate," Kaelin said, each word dropping like an anvil. "You will address her as my lady or your grace. And you will do so with the respect her position commands. Is tradition unclear on this point, elder? Shall I clarify it for the entire council?" A flush of real color stained Lyra's pale cheeks. The public reprimand was brutal. She bowed her head, a muscle ticking in her jaw. "My apologies, your grace. My king. I meant no disrespect." The words were sour. Kaelin's gaze shifted to Elara. The fury melted, replaced by a warmth that was for her alone. "Elara, join me." All eyes followed her as she descended the staircase, feeling hundreds of stares on her skin. She kept her chin up, walking towards the throne. Kaelin didn't rise. He simply held out his hand. She placed hers in it, and he drew her to stand beside his throne. Not in front of it, but level with it. A place of partnership. "This audience is concluded," Kaelin announced, his voice carrying. "My mate and I have matters to attend to." As the hall began to clear, buzzing with new gossip, Kaelin turned to her. He lifted their joined hands, kissing her knuckles. "You should have called for me. I needed to see," she said softly. "I needed to understand what you rule. And who rules with you." She glanced towards the departing, stiff-backed form of Lyra. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Lyra represents an old way of thinking. Bloodlines and politics. She hoped to be queen herself one day, through a strategic alliance. The moon had other plans. He looked at Elara, his thumb stroking her palm. "You are my plan. The only one that matters. Do not let shadows frighten you, little one. You stand in the sun now. With me." That night, a formal feast was announced in honor of the new queen. The great hall was transformed, filled with light, music, and the scent of roasting meat and spices. Elara wore a gown of midnight blue, the Blackwater color, a subtle crown of silver leaves resting on her brow, Kaelin's doing. She sat at his right hand, the pack watching their every interaction. She saw curiosity, skepticism, but also growing acceptance as they saw the way their king looked at her as if she held every star in the sky in her eyes. During a lull, a grizzled old warrior, one of Kaelin's most trusted, Thorn, approached their table. He bowed to Kaelin, then turned to Elara, his eyes sharp, but not unkind. "My lady," Thorn said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "The men and I have a question. The king says you are strong. Our bond to him tells us you are precious. But a queen of Blackwater must be more than precious. What is your strength?" A hush fell over their section of the hall, It was a blunt, challenging question. Lyra, sitting with the elders, watched with a faint, cold smile. Elara's pulse quickened. She felt Kaelin tense beside her, ready to intervene. She placed a subtle hand on his arm, stilling him. She looked at Thorn, then at the other warriors listening. "My strength," she said, her voice gaining clarity, "is that I have known fear, and cold, and betrayal. I know the value of the warmth, safety, and loyalty I have been shown here. My strength is that I carry the future, not just of a bloodline, but of a promise. The king's promise. And I will protect that promise, and this pack that is now mine, with the fierceness of one who knows exactly what it is to lose everything." She held Thorn's gaze, letting a flicker of the resilient Omega spirit, honed by survival, show through. "Is that strength enough for you, warrior?" Thorn stared at her for a long moment. Then, a slow, respectful smile spread across his weathered face. He pounded his fist over his heart and bowed deeply. "It is, my queen. Welcome to Blackwater." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Kaelin looked at her, and the pride in his golden eyes was a hotter, brighter thing than any fire in the hall. He leaned close, his lips near her ear, his words for her alone. "You magnificent creature," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "You are already winning my kingdom, heart by heart." As the music swelled again, Elara felt a shift within the pack bonds, a new thread, tentative but strong, weaving her into the fabric of Blackwater. She was not just Kaelin's mate. She was becoming their queen, and the shadow in the corner, Lyra's cold blue eyes, watched it all, a plan solidifying in the frosty depths of her mind. The game for the throne was not over. It had just begun. The victory with Thorn was a sweet, heady thing, but Elara knew one warrior's respect did not secure a throne. In the days that followed, she decided to earn it, not in the Great Hall, but in the quiet, vital places of Blackwater. While Kaelin managed patrols and border disputes, she asked Althea to show her the healing wards. The air there was sharp with antiseptic herbs and the softer scent of pain. She saw wounded warriors from skirmishes with rogue wolves, elderly pack members with aching joints, a young mother struggling with a feverish pup. Elara didn't try to command. She watched. She learned. She fetched clean linen and boiled water. Her Omega nature, so despised in Greyfall, the gentle empathy, the nurturing instinct found its purpose here. One afternoon, she sat by the bed of the old woodcarver, Orin, whose hands were stiff with arthritis. She held a cup of willow bark tea for him to sip. "You don't have to do this, Your Grace," he muttered, embarrassed. "I want to," she said softly. "Tell me about the wolf you're carving for your grandson." His eyes lit up, as he spoke of the grain of the oak, of making the fur look real. She massaged a salve into his gnarled fingers with a gentle, steady touch. He didn't just see his queen. He saw kindness. Word began to spread. Kaelin watched her conquests from a distance, a fierce pride burning in his chest. He found her one evening, not in their chambers, but in the keep's vast kitchen, sleeves rolled up, laughing with the head cook, Marta, as she learned to shape the dense, dark rye bread that was a Blackwater staple. Flour dusted her nose. He leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, a smile tugging at his lips. "Abducting my mate, only to find she's been stolen by the kitchen staff," he rumbled. Marta jumped, but Elara just smiled, holding up a misshapen loaf. "I am learning to be useful." He crossed the room, ignoring the bowed heads of the staff. He cupped her floury face, his thumb brushing the dust from her nose. "You are the heart of this keep. That is your use. You make it a home." He kissed her, softly, there in the warmth of the ovens, and the kitchen staff pretended very hard to see nothing. But the shadows lingered. Lyra's frosty scent seemed to haunt the corridors. Elara felt watched. Small things went amiss. A goblet of wine served to her tasted strangely bitter. Kaelin smelt it, dumped it, and had the servant, a young beta with ties to Lyra's household, reassigned to the stables. A step on a seldom-used staircase gave way beneath her foot, but Kaelin's preternatural reflexes yanked her back from the fall. Each incident was investigated, but always led to accident, or a hapless culprit with no clear link to the elder. The tension came to a head in the Pack Gardens, a terraced sanctuary of hardy winter blooms and evergreen shrubs. Elara was walking there, seeking peace, when she found Lyra waiting by a frozen fountain. "My lady," Lyra said, the title still a barb on her tongue. "Enjoying the spoils of your Rapid ascent? Enjoying the silence, Elara replied, not stopping. Lyra moved to block her path. It won't last. He is in the thrall of the bond now, the novelty of his charity project. But when the pup comes, when it carries the scent of another alpha, weak and dishonorable, when it cries with a voice that is not his, the doubt will creep in. The pack's doubt. His doubt. Elara's hand flew to her belly. The old fear, Ronan's poison, tried to rise. But then she felt it, the bond. Not a doubt, but a solid, roaring certainty. Love. Possession. Family. She straightened, meeting Lyra's cold gaze. You speak of things you do not understand, Elara said, her voice low but clear. The king's heart is not so small, nor his will so weak. This child is mine, therefore it is his. That is the law of our bond, stronger than any bloodline. You trade in shadows, Lyra. I live in the sun he built for me. Step out of my way. For the first time, Lyra looked uncertain, thrown by the steel in the Omega's voice. Elara walked past her, head high. She didn't go to Kaelin with the words. She went to him with her need. She found him in his war room, studying maps. Without a word, she walked into his open arms, pressing her face against his chest, breathing in his scent of safety and strength. He held her instantly, his growl protective. What happened? Just hold me, she whispered. Just remind me. He understood. He scooped her up, carried her to the fur before the fire in their chamber, and held her cradled in his lap. He didn't press, he just held her. One large hand splayed over her belly, his lips in her hair. The baby kicked, a strong, definite movement. Kaelin chuckled, a warm, vibrating sound. See? Even my air agrees. This is where you belong. Air? She breathed, looking up at him. The first of many, he said, his golden eyes serious. Our family, our dynasty. Lyra and her whispers are nothing. You are everything. That night, he proved it. At the evening meal, he stood before the pack, Elara's hand firmly in his. There is talk in shadows, Kaelin announced, his voice cutting through the hall. Whispers that seek to poison what is pure. Let me be clear. The child my mate carries is my child. It will bear my name, my protection, and my love. It will be your future alpha, or a cherished princess. Any who speak otherwise are not questioning her, they are questioning me, and I have little patience for such disloyalty. His dominance flooded the room, a physical weight of warning. Every head bowed, including Lyra's, pale and stiff. The line was drawn in stone. Later, in the dark, wrapped in each other, Kaelin traced the curve of her hip. I will tear down any shadow that tries to touch you, Elara. Even if it comes from within my own walls. She believed him. But as she drifted to sleep, safe in his arms, she knew she wouldn't just be the protected queen. She would become the protecting queen. For him, for her child, for their pack. The thought no longer terrified her. It filled her with a calm, solid strength. Spring came to the mountains in a tentative rush of melting snow and stubborn wildflowers. Elara's body changed, her belly rounding into a graceful curve that Kaelin worshipped with his hands and his lips each night. The pack's acceptance of her grew with her pregnancy, seeing it as a blessing, a promise of a vibrant future. She was a familiar, beloved sight in the healing wards, the kitchens, the nursery, yet, the bond between her and Kaelin, while profound, remained unconsummated. He was relentless in his care, ferocious in his protection, tender in his affection, but he held a part of himself back, a leashed intensity she felt trembling in his touch when he thought she was asleep. She understood. He was giving her time, space, respecting the trauma of her past. But the wanting grew, a slow, sweet burn that matched the new life blooming within her. The catalyst came from an unexpected source. Ronan. A border patrol intercepted a Greyfall scout carrying a message. Not a declaration of war, but something Kaelin deemed more insidious. He brought the scroll to her in their solar, his expression a mask of cold fury. Read it, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Elara unrolled the parchment. Ronan's arrogant script slashed across the page. It spoke not of reclaiming her, but of clarifying lineage. He generously offered to take the child off their hands once it was born, to spare Blackwater the burden of a bastard heir. He called it an act of mercy. The words were meant to demean, to plant a seed of discord. They had the opposite effect. A fire, hot and pure, ignited in Alara's chest. She was not the scared runaway anymore. She was the queen of Blackwater, carrying the air of a king who loved her. She crumpled the parchment and threw it into the fire. It flared, consuming Ronan's poison. She turned to Kaelin, her eyes blazing with a green fire he had never seen. "He fears you," she said, her voice steady. "He fears the strength of what we are. This is his only weapon now." Petty words. Kaelin watched the fire consume the message, then looked at her. The control he'd so carefully maintained snapped. The raw, possessive alpha, the mate, surged to the forefront. He crossed the room in 2 strides. "He will never touch you. He will never even look at my child," he growled, the sound vibrating in the stone room. He cradled her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "You are mine, Alara. In every way. I have tried to be patient, but I cannot. I will not wait any longer." The claim in his eyes was absolute, a question and a demand. Alara didn't hesitate. She rose onto her toes, bridging the gap between them, and kissed him. It was not like the soft, comforting kisses they'd shared. This was a conflagration. It was her answer, her surrender, and her own claim. She poured every ounce of her trust, her love, her fierce, growing strength into it. Kaelin's response was a low, triumphant roar against her mouth. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her to their bedchamber as if she weighed nothing. What followed was not a storm, but a revelation. Kaelin was endlessly careful with her changing body, worshipping every new curve. But there was nothing careful about his possession. It was deep, primal, and utterly consuming. The final, physical sealing of their bond unleashed a torrent of sensation and emotion through the psychic link between them. Alara didn't just feel her own pleasure. She felt the staggering depth of his love, the awe he felt for her, the furious, joyful certainty of mine. And when the peak crashed over them, it was Kaelin who, in a moment of perfect, instinctual clarity, sank his teeth into the smooth join of her neck and shoulder, marking her as his mate for all to see. The pain was sharp, bright, and instantly eclipsed by a wave of completion so profound it brought tears to her eyes. The bond blazed, permanent and unbreakable, a golden road connecting their souls. She felt his life force, ancient and powerful, flow into her, and hers, resilient and bright, flow into him. When he pulled back, his eyes were pure, luminous gold, his lips stained with her blood. He looked at her with a reverence that stole her breath. "My queen," he breathed. "My heart, my life." Exhausted, entwined, they lay together as moonlight washed over them. Alara traced the mark on his shoulder, the mirror of her own, a claiming she had given him without thought in her own passion. They were marked, matched, complete. The next morning, she wore the mark openly, a jeweled collar of love bites and the distinct, healing scar of his mating bite. She walked into the great hall for breakfast beside him, her hand in his. The change in them was palpable, a new harmony, a fused power that radiated from them both. Lyra, at the elders' table, took one look at the mark on Alara's neck, at the way Kaelin's hand never left the small of her back, at the serene, powerful light in the Omega's eyes, and her face went ashen. Her last hope that the bond would remain unsealed, fragile, shattered. Kaelin addressed the hall, his voice ringing with a new, settled joy. "Let all bear witness. The moon's design is complete. My mate is marked. Our bond is eternal. Celebrate with us." And the pack did. The feast that night was one of genuine joy. The shadow of Ronan's letter was gone, burned away by a stronger fire. Alara, sitting on her throne beside her king, his mark singing on her skin, knew no fear. She was claimed, she was loved, and she was, irrevocably, home. With the mating bond sealed, a profound peace settled over Alara. The mark on her neck was a badge of honor, a constant, physical reminder of Kaelin's devotion. The pack's respect solidified into genuine affection. Even the warriors who valued strength above all saw the new steel in her gaze, the unshakable calm that came from being utterly secure in her alpha's love. But a cornered animal is at its most dangerous. Lyra, seeing her influence wane, Her ambitions for the throne turned to dust, grew desperate. She could not attack the queen directly. Kaelin's protection was an impenetrable wall. So, she aimed for the next most vulnerable target, the pack's perception of the unborn heir. She began a subtle, insidious campaign. She didn't speak against the child, she voiced concerns. In council meetings, she questioned the preparedness of the royal healers. She lamented the unfortunate complications that can arise with mixed bloodlines, always sotto voce, always framed as caring for the pack's stability. She planted seeds of anxiety in fertile soil. Alara felt the shift. It was in the overly solicitous questions from some elders, in the fleeting, assessing looks sent her way when her back was turned. The baby was due in a month. The air grew thick with anticipation and, now, a undercurrent of manufactured dread. Kaelin, attuned to every nuance of her mood, felt her tension. "Tell me," he commanded one night, as she stared into the fire, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "It's Lyra," Alara confessed. "She's poisoning the well. Not against me, not directly. Against our baby." Kaelin's eyes hardened to chips of gold. "I will exile her tonight. She can spend her days howling at the border." Alara shook her head. "No. That would make her a martyr to those she swayed. It would look like you silencing concern for our child. We must cut the weed out by the root, publicly." He looked at her, a fierce pride glowing in his eyes. "You have a plan, my queen?" "A demonstration," she said softly. "Of unity, of strength, of pure, undiluted Blackwater spirit." 2 nights later, under a full moon, Kaelin called for a pack gathering at the sacred clearing. The Heartstone, a massive, rune-carved monolith, at the center of their territory. The entire pack assembled, their fur and human forms shimmering in the silvery light. The air buzzed with speculation. Kaelin stood before the Heartstone, Alara beside him. He addressed the sea of faces. "The moon blesses us with new life soon," his voice boomed. "But I feel whispers on the wind. Whispers of doubt, of fear for the future. A pack divided by fear is a pack already defeated. So tonight, we remind ourselves what we are. We are Blackwater. Our strength is not in purity of blood, but in purity of purpose. Our bond is not a chain, but a fortress." He stepped back and nodded to Alara. This was her moment. She stepped forward, facing the pack. She wore a simple white gown that flowed over her pregnancy, her mating mark stark and beautiful in the moonlight. She said nothing. Instead, she closed her eyes and reached down, not into herself, but into the bond with Kaelin, and through him, into the vast, humming network of the pack bonds. She had been practicing. And Omega's strength was connection, empathy, harmony. She had learned to feel the pack's emotional tapestry, the joys, the worries, the loyalties. Now, she didn't just feel it, she pulled on it. She focused on one emotion, unwavering loyalty to Kaelin, the love for their alpha king. She gathered every thread of that feeling from the hundreds of wolves present, weaving them together in her heart. Then, she pushed. A wave of palpable emotion washed over the clearing. It was warmth, certainty, and fierce, unshakable devotion. Warriors stood taller. Mothers held their pups closer. A collective sigh, like the wind through pines, rustled through the crowd. They felt it, their own love for their king, amplified and reflected back at them through their queen. Then, Alara reached for Kaelin's hand. She opened the bond between them wide. And through her, he channeled his own immense power. But it wasn't the crushing dominance he used in battle. It was the protective, generative power of the Alpha, the heart of the pack. Golden light, subtle but visible in the moonlight, seemed to emanate from their joined hands, enveloping them both, and then spreading out in a gentle pulse across the clearing. The pack felt it as a surge of well-being, of safety, of rightness. In that moment, every doubt Lyra had sown withered and died. They saw their queen, glowing with their combined power, carrying their future, and they knew. Alara opened her eyes, slightly breathless. She looked straight at Lyra, who stood at the front of the elders, her face a mask of stunned horror. "This is our strength," Alara said, her voice clear and carrying without shouting. "The Alpha's might and the Omega's heart. Together. This child will be born into this unity. It will be the strongest of us all because it will be born of love, not politics. Any who cannot feel this truth," her gaze swept the crowd, landing finally, pointedly, on Lyra, "are no longer of Blackwater's heart." The silence was absolute. Then, Thorn, the old warrior, shifted into his giant, grey wolf form. He laid himself at Alara's feet, exposing his throat in ultimate submission. One by one, the entire pack followed suit. Warriors, elders, mothers, children, a sea of wolves, paying homage not just to their king, but to their queen. Lyra stood alone, the only one still in human form, isolated and defeated. The pack's will, solidified by Alara's profound demonstration, had turned against her. Kalen stepped forward, his arm around Alara. "The Council of Elders will have a new head by dawn," he declared, his eyes on Lyra. "Your council is no longer required. You will retire to the remote northern holdfast. You are spared exile for your years of service, but you are removed from this pack's heart. Go quietly." Lyra said nothing. She bowed her head, the fight utterly gone, and melted away into the darkness, her schemes crumbling to ash. As the pack rose, their howls of celebration and unity shook the mountains. Kalen turned Alara in his arms, his forehead resting against hers. "You magnificent, powerful creature," he whispered, awe in every syllable. "You didn't just win them, you remade them." Alara smiled, leaning into him, feeling the baby kick in joyous rhythm with the pack's triumphant howls. The shadow was gone. Only light remained. The final weeks of Alara's pregnancy were a time of quiet, cocooned joy. With Lyra's poison removed, the pack's focus became a single, celebratory preparation for the royal birth. The royal chambers were transformed into a sanctuary of soft light and comforts, and healer Althea was a constant, reassuring presence. Kalen was a study in controlled frenzy. The mighty Alpha King, who could stare down an army without blinking, fretted over the thickness of rugs and the temperature of herbal teas. He spent hours with his head pressed against Alara's belly, talking in low rumbles to the active life within, telling stories of Blackwater's mountains and stars, promising adventures. "He knows your voice," Alara murmured one evening, smiling as the baby stilled at the sound of Kalen's storytelling. "He will know my strength and my protection every day of his life," Kalen vowed, kissing her belly. The labor began at dawn on a day when the spring sun finally broke winter's last grip, painting the mountains in gold and new green. The first contraction was a deep, tightening wave. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. Kalen, who had been dozing beside her, was instantly awake, his senses sharp. "Althea!" His roar was more panic than command. What followed was not a trial, but a sacred, powerful passage. Alara, drawing on a well of strength she hadn't known, she possessed the strength of a survivor, a mate. A queen bore down with a focus that awed the attending healers. Kalen never left her side, holding her hands, letting her crush his fingers, wiping her brow, his presence an anchor of unwavering support. Through the bond, he fed her his immense strength, a steady river of power for her to draw upon. When the final push came, Alara gave a cry that was not of pain, but of primal, triumphant effort. And into healer Althea's waiting hands slid a tiny, perfect being. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, a strong, indignant wail filled the chamber. "A son," Althea announced, her voice thick with emotion. She cleaned the babe quickly and laid him on Alara's chest. Alara looked down, tears blurring her vision. He had a shock of dark hair, like Kalen's, and his little face was scrunched in protest. But as she touched his cheek, his cries quieted. He blinked open eyes that, even in their newborn haze, were a startling, bright gold. Kalen knelt by the bed, his own eyes, identical in their gold, wide with an emotion too vast for words. He reached out a trembling finger, and the baby's tiny hand wrapped around it with a surprising grip. "He has your eyes," Alara whispered. "He has your spirit," Kalen breathed, his voice ragged. He leaned down and kissed Alara, a kiss of gratitude, of awe, of boundless love. Then, he kissed his son's forehead. "Welcome, my son. Welcome, Eric of Blackwater, heir to the stone and the sky." The news flew through the keep like wildfire. The pack's joy was a tangible force. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of glory, Kalen carried his swaddled son out onto the main balcony overlooking the courtyard. Alara stood beside him, wrapped in a warm robe, leaning into his strength. The entire pack had gathered below, a sea of upturned, hopeful faces. Kalen held the baby high, and a ray of the dying sun caught the child, making him seem to glow. "Behold," Kaelin's voice, thick with pride, echoed off the mountains. Your future Alpha, Eric, son of Ilara, my fated queen. Born of love, blessed by the moon, and protected by the might of Blackwater. A single, unified howl rose from the pack, a sound of pure, undiluted joy and acceptance that shook the very foundations of the keep. It was a vow, a welcome, a celebration. In that moment, any lingering ghost of Ronan, of doubt, of past pain, was utterly erased. Later, in the firelit quiet of their chamber, with Eric sleeping contentedly in a carved cradle beside the bed, Kaelin pulled Ilara into his arms. They were both exhausted, elated, forever changed. You have given me everything, he murmured into her hair. A heart, a home, a dynasty. Ilara looked at their son, then at her mate, her king. You gave me a world, she said simply. And the courage to rule it by your side. As Eric gave a small, sleepy sigh, Ilara knew her story was no longer one of rejection and flight. It was a legend in the making. The legend of the Omega Queen, the king who claimed his heart, and the heir who would unite them all. And it was only the beginning. Peace, for a king like Kaelin, was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of unshakable strength. For 3 moons, that strength cradled Blackwater in a golden age. Eric grew plump and strong, his golden eyes missing nothing, his laughter echoing through the stone halls like the best kind of music. Ilara blossomed into her queenship, her gentle Omega wisdom balancing Kaelin's fierce justice. The pack thrived, but on the borders, a snake, though beaten, still twitched. Ronan of Greyfall, humiliated by the forfeit of his meadowlands and the legendary tale of Ilara's rise, festered. The news of a strong male heir born to Blackwater was the final insult. His own pack grew restless, seeing Blackwater prosperity. Desperate to reclaim status, Ronan concocted a plan not of force, but of deceit. He sent an emissary under a flag of truce, Anya, a clever, silver-tongued beta female, with no combat skill, but a mind like a trap. She was granted audience in the Great Hall. Kaelin sat on his throne, Ilara beside him with Eric in her arms. The pack watched, wary. Anya bowed low. Alpha King Kaelin, Queen Ilara, Alpha Ronan sends his congratulations on the birth of your heir. Her smile was slick. He also wishes to propose an end to our tensions. A permanent alliance, sealed in the traditional way. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. Speak plainly. A mating, Anya said, her gaze sliding to Ilara. Between your heir, Prince Eric, and a future daughter of Greyfall's Alpha line, to unite our packs in the next generation. It would legitimize the unique circumstances of the prince's birth, tying him to a pure Alpha lineage. The insult was masterful, veiled as diplomacy. It implied Eric needed legitimizing. It suggested Greyfall's blood was superior. A murmur of anger rippled through the Blackwater pack. Ilara felt a cold fury settle in her veins. She looked at her son, at his perfect face, and saw him being traded like a commodity to clean up Ronan's mess. Before Kaelin could unleash his wrath, she spoke, her voice cool and clear, cutting through the murmur. There is nothing to legitimize, she said. My son's lineage is beyond question. He is the son of the Alpha King of Blackwater and his fated queen. His blood is the purest of all, the blood of love and the moon's own decree. She stood, shifting Eric to her hip, and walked down the dais steps until she stood before Anya. Alpha Ronan mistakes my history for weakness. He mistakes my king's mercy for opportunity. Tell him this. Blackwater does not bargain with its future. We forge it. Our heir will choose his own mate, as his father did, by the moon's design, not by the petty schemes of a fading alpha. Anya's smugness faltered under Ilara's regal glare. My queen, consider the stability it would bring. The only stability we need, Kaelin's voice boomed, rising from his throne, is the certainty that Greyfall will stay on its side of the border. You have your answer. Now, leave my hall before I forget the rules of truce. As Anya scurried away, Kaelin came to stand beside Ilara, his hand on the small of her back. The pack erupted in cheers for their queen's defiance, but Ilara knew Ronan. A rejected snake would strike. He won't accept this, she whispered to Kaelin that night. I know, Kaelin said, his jaw tight. He will try something foolish, and when he does, I will end him. The foolishness came a week later. A small, elite group of Greyfall warriors, using a hidden mountain pass, attempted to infiltrate Blackwater territory. Their goal was not battle, but kidnapping. to steal the air and force the alliance. Kaelin's border patrols, however, were prepared. Thorn himself led the ambush, catching the Greyfall party in a narrow defile. The fight was short, brutal, and utterly one-sided. The Greyfall wolves were captured, not killed, a message in itself. Kaelin had them brought, bound and beaten, to the training grounds before the entire pack. Alara stood beside him, Eric safely with Althea in the keep. Ronan's beta, Garrick, glared up defiantly. He will come for what's his. Kaelin didn't even look at him. He addressed his pack, his voice deathly calm. Greyfall has broken the peace. They have trespassed, and they have threatened the life of your prince. This is an act of war. He then turned his molten gaze on the prisoners. But I am not a wasteful king. You will carry a message back to your alpha. Every one of you. He nodded to his warriors. What followed was not a massacre, but a branding. Each Greyfall warrior had the Greyfall pack sigil burned from their fur with a hot, silver-coated brand, a permanent, painful mark of expulsion and disgrace. Garrick screamed as the silver bit into his shoulder, searing away his identity. Take your new scars to Ronan, Kaelin said, his voice like winter's heart. Tell him this is the only mark my territory will ever bear from Greyfall. The next time he sends wolves across my border, I will not send them back. I will send him their heads in a basket, and then I will come for his. The broken, branded wolves were dragged to the border and released. The message was received. No more emissaries came. No more scouts tested the lines. Greyfall fell into a sullen, terrified silence. Ronan's power, already weakened, crumbled completely. His pack saw the fate of his best warriors and wanted no part of his obsession. That night, Kaelin held Alara tightly on the balcony, looking out over his peaceful, powerful kingdom. It is done, he said. He is broken. He will not rise again. Alara leaned back against him, feeling the steady, mighty beat of his heart. She thought of the terrified girl in the forest, hunted by those same wolves. Now, she was the queen whose word had shattered their alpha. The circle was closed. Our son will know only peace, she said. Our son, Kaelin corrected gently, nuzzling her mark. Will know only strength, the strength to protect what is his, as I protect you. Below them, in the moonlit courtyard, a single confident howl rose, a young warrior on patrol, proud and unafraid. It was the sound of their future, secure and strong. With external threats silenced, life in Blackwater deepened into a rich, satisfying rhythm. Alara's influence, once a gentle seep, became a fundamental pillar of the kingdom. She established a formal council for the pack's families, a place where mothers could voice concerns about the nursery, elders could request comforts, and young ones could suggest festivals. It was unheard of, an Omega-led council, but Kaelin sanctioned it with a proud smile. The ideas that flowed from it: a harvest festival for all ages, a system where seasoned warriors mentored teenagers, a communal garden for healing herbs made Blackwater not just strong, but joyful. Eric was the living embodiment of that joy. At 6 months old, he was a whirlwind of dark hair and golden-eyed curiosity. His first shift came not in fear or pain, but in a giggling fit of delight while playing with a wolf pup-sized stuffed rabbit. One moment he was a chubby baby grasping for the toy. The next, a fluffy, dark-furred pup with stunned golden eyes tumbling head over paws. Alara had gasped, but Kaelin had thrown back his head and laughed with a sound of pure triumph, scooping his wolf pup son into his arms. Unnatural, born to the form, he'd crowed, and the news had spread, another sign of the heir's potent destiny. Yet, for Alara, one small, persistent thorn remained. She was beloved, she was powerful, she was mate-marked, but she had never been formally crowned. It was a formality, Kaelin argued. The pack saw her as queen. But to Alara, and to the lingering old ways some still clung to, it mattered. A crowned queen was inviolable, her position etched into pack law forever. She didn't ask. She knew Kaelin's mind was on wider security, on trade routes, on Eric's training plan, already drafted. She focused on her people, on her son, on the quiet, fierce love she built with her alpha every night. Kaelin, however, noticed everything. He saw the way her eyes sometimes lingered on the simple silver circlet he wore, only for high ceremonies. He felt the faint, unvoiced wish in the bond. Not a demand, but a humble hope. It sparked an idea in him, not a duty, but a gift, a testament. He began to work in secret. He consulted with the finest silversmith in the territory, a gruff old wolf whose talent was matchless. He sent warriors on hunting trips to retrieve a specific, rare moonstone said to hold the light of the full moon within it. He even enlisted Thorn and Althea to keep Alara distracted with long walks and extended healing sessions. The day of the summer solstice, the greatest celebration of light and pack, arrived. The keep was festooned with garlands of green and gold. Feasting and games had lasted all day. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery hues, Kaelin called for the final gathering at the Heartstone clearing. The pack assembled, sated and merry. Alara stood at the front, holding Arik, who was babbling at the sight of so many wolves. She assumed it was for the traditional solstice howl. Kaelin stepped forward, but not to lead the howl. He raised his hands for silence. "My people," he began, his voice warm yet solemn. "We celebrate light today. But the greatest light in my life, the light that guides Blackwater, came to me not on a summer day, but on a winter's night. She came to me with nothing but courage in her heart, and a precious life in her womb. She asked for no crown, she demanded no title, she earned both, every day since, with her wisdom, her strength, and her boundless heart." Alara's breath caught. She looked at him, confused. Kaelin turned to her, his golden eyes soft. He nodded to Thorn, who stepped forward carrying a velvet cushion. On it rested a crown. It was not a heavy, masculine circlet of gold. It was silver, delicate yet impossibly strong, woven in a pattern of intertwining vines and wolf tracks. At its center, set like a captive star, was the moonstone. It glowed with a soft, internal radiance, mirroring the first rising moon of the evening. Set among the vines were smaller stones the color of forest moss and autumn amber. Her eyes, his touch. "Alara," Kaelin said, taking the crown. "My fated mate, my heart. You are the strength I did not know I lacked, the compassion that tempers my rule, the mother of my heir and the soul of my pack. You are not queen because I say so. You are queen because you are. Will you let me make it official, before our pack and our moon?" Tears streamed down Alara's face, silent and joyful. She could only nod. Kaelin took Arik from her arms, handing him gently to a beaming Althea. Then, with a reverence that hushed the entire world, he placed the silver crown upon Alara's head. It fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant to rest there. The moonstone blazed brighter for a moment, as if accepting its bearer. "Behold!" Kaelin roared, turning her to face the pack. "Your crowned queen, Alara of Blackwater. May her reign be as long and as blessed as the mountains themselves." The explosion of sound was deafening howls, cheers, the pounding of feet and fists against chests. It was a wave of love and acceptance that washed over Alara, solidifying her place in the tapestry of the pack's history forever. That night, under the solstice moon, they stood together on their balcony, crowned king and crowned queen, their sleeping heir in the chamber behind them. "You gave me a crown," Alara whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder, feeling the cool, beautiful weight of it. "You gave me a kingdom worth crowning," he replied, kissing her hair. "Not of land, but of heart. This is only the beginning, my love. Our legend is just being written." And as the twin moons rose over the peaceful, mighty realm of Blackwater, their light gleaming on the silver crown and the contented faces of its rulers, it was a promise of 1,000 golden days to come. Years are kind to a pack blessed by the moon and ruled by love. 5 summers turned the fluffy dark wolf pup into a sturdy, keen-eyed boy of 6, with his father's commanding presence and his mother's thoughtful smile. Prince Arik was the sun around which the Blackwater pack orbited, a symbol of their prosperous future. On the day of the great autumn hunt, a tradition welcoming the season of plenty, the entire pack gathered in the foothills. It was a celebration of skill and community, not just slaughter. Kaelin, in his prime, a gray streak or two at his temples only adding to his majesty, stood with his hunting party. But all eyes were on Arik, who was to join the junior hunt for the first time. The boy stood straight, a small bow in his hand, quiver on his back. He looked to his father for guidance. Kaelin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, a true hunter respects the herd. We take only what we need, and we thank the spirit of the land. Your mother has taught you to feel the forest's heartbeat. Listen to it." Arik nodded, his little face serious. "I will, father." Alara, watching from a vantage point with the other families, felt a swell of pride so intense, It tightened her throat. Her son. Their son. Not a symbol of a fractured past, but the unblemished hope of tomorrow. The hunt was a triumph. Eric, showing remarkable patience and instinct for one so young, helped flush a stag towards the senior hunters. He didn't fire the final shot that honor went to Thorn, now grizzled and even more revered, but his role was pivotal. When the stag was respectfully field-dressed, Eric was given the honor of presenting the heart of the hunt, a token of life given to his mother. He marched up to her, covered in a little dirt, eyes shining, holding the carefully wrapped token. "For you, mother. For our pack." Elara accepted it, then pulled him into a fierce hug, her crown now worn with easy grace for festivals glinting. "I am so proud of you, my brave wolf." That night, the feast was legendary. The great fire roared, music filled the air, and stories were told. As the festivities peaked, Kaelin stood, raising a horn of mead. "To the hunt, to the herd that feeds us, to the land that sustains us." The pack echoed the toast. Then, Kaelin's gaze found Elara, seated with Eric, leaning sleepily against her. "And to the heart that guides us all, my queen." The cheer was deafening. Elara smiled, her eyes meeting his across the fire. The bond between them, after all these years, was not a quiet hum but a deep, resonant song, a symphony of shared history, passion, and an unbreakable partnership. Later, with Eric asleep in his own chamber nearby, Elara and Kaelin walked the high battlements under a blanket of stars. The kingdom below was quiet, safe, thriving. "Do you ever think of it?" Elara asked softly, leaning into him. "The forest. That night?" "Every day," Kaelin said, his arm tightening around her. "Not with anger, with gratitude. It was the night the moon delivered my destiny to me, shivering, and brave, and perfect." He stopped, turning her to face him. "You know, when I saw you, I didn't just see a mate. I saw the missing piece of my soul. I saw the mother of kings. I saw my forever." He kissed her then. A kiss that tasted of mead and smoke, and a love that had only deepened with time. It was a kiss of possession, of gratitude, of endless wonder. "I love you, Kaelin," she whispered against his lips. "My king, my mate, my life. And I you, Elara, my queen, my heart, my everything." The next morning, a different kind of messenger arrived, not from a rival pack, but from a distant, allied one. He bore gifts and a request. They had heard tales of Blackwater's wisdom and prosperity. They sought not an alliance of fear, but of friendship. They wanted to send their young ones to learn from Blackwater's ways, from its fearsome king and its legendary Omega Queen. As Kaelin and Elara received the messenger in the Great Hall, sitting side by side on their twin thrones, Eric at their feet playing with a wooden wolf, Elara felt the circle of their story complete. She had come as a runaway, rejected, carrying a secret. She had been claimed by a king, crowned a queen, and had built a legacy, not on fear, but on love. She had taken her pain and forged it into compassion, her weakness into a unique strength. Kaelin looked at her, a question in his eyes. She gave a slight, regal nod. "We welcome friendship," Kaelin declared to the messenger. "Send your young ones. Let them learn that a pack's true strength lies not in the sharpness of its claws alone, but in the wisdom of its heart, the fairness of its rule, and the unbreakable bond of its leaders." The messenger bowed deeply, impressed. As they walked back to their chambers, hand in hand, with Eric running ahead, laughing, Elara knew this was their golden age. Not an ending, but a glorious, sun-drenched beginning. Their story was one for the ages, a tale sung by firesides for generations to come. The tale of the Omega Queen and the king who loved her, and the mighty, beloved pack they built together, under the eternal light of the moon. The end.